Hey guys, before we get started, we want to tell you about our champion partners, including our Hall of Fame partners, Gregg Vet Clinic, Hicks Chicks, Syrah Technologies, Kenny Chesney's Blue Chair Bay Rum, J&J Flooring and Natural Stone, Concordia Bank and Trust, and Mart. So go visit all of our champion partners that you see on the screen right now. Make sure to do business with them and tell them Miss Lou Champion sent you. Enjoy the show. All right, we are in studio with the man, Coach Dee Faircloth. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so pumped to have you here today. I'm excited to talk to you, hear some stories.
Oh, I've got some stories.
I know you do. Look, before, I got to tell everybody I'm wearing my hat in honor of you. Whenever I started teaching over in Vidalia, I passed this hat up in the store, and I looked at it and I said, man, that looks just like Coach Faircloth. And all those years ago, we used to pick on each other, and then I said, I got to get that. So I wore this hat all the time teaching in honor of you, and I'm wearing it today in honor of you.
You're a good man.
Coach is not only a Vidalia legend, but a Concordia Parish legend and a state legend throughout high school football. Where did you grow up?
All right. I was born in Faraday, Louisiana, of all places.
Okay.
And my dad, after he got out of the war, he went back into coaching, and he coached for 34 years. One of his stops was at Texas A&M.
Oh, wow.
And we moved all over the country. I was a gypsy. I went to like 12 different schools in 12 years, some of them in the same town. But I knew a lot of people.
How many of them were alternative schools?
None. They didn't have those in those days. They called them prison. You know, he laid the foundation for me. I mean, I raised in Texas A&M my first years in school, and it was a hard school. A&M Consolidated, one of the top schools in the nation. Mm-hmm. I almost failed first grade, and it was a challenge. But I'll always be an Aggie. And anytime they play LSU or Alabama, I always pull for the Aggies.
I remember that.
And so he got me started. And like I say, we went different schools. I attended Leesville High School, Bolton High School in Alexandria, and I finished up at Mangum, the little school up north. And love Mangum. I got a lot of roots still there. Married my wife, she's from Mangum.
Okay.
But it was unique, you know, traveling all over the place and doing different schools. And it was he was coaching at Manny, and I was playing at Northeast. I had a scholarship at NLU, and he died of a heart attack. Had a heart attack with me. We were scouting to Lula. He was playing them in the playoffs. He died that night. And that was my goal, to coach with my dad. But it never came about. But I was at Northeast playing, and I got hurt. And I couldn't play anymore. Too many brain concussions. That's what's wrong with me now. And it's Coach White up there put me on his staff, so I was with him for 3 years on his coaching staff.
This is at Manny.
Huh?
Is this at Manny or is
no,
this
at Northeast?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Northeast.
Okay, so you were on the coaching staff at Northeast for a little while.
Yeah, for 3 years.
Okay.
And I got my master's degree and all that, and I left there and got the head coaching job at Manny, and that lasted 2 days. I lost my job to Lou Remkus, who was the coach of the Houston Oilers when they won the AFL championship with Billy Cannon. So he knocked me out of the saddle, which is probably the greatest thing ever happened to me, because Coach Remkus is next year coaching there. He was 0-11. Now, if a pro coach goes 0-11, where do you think a rookie coach is going to go? I'd probably gone 0-15 on 11 team schedule.
How do they call you and tell you that after 2 days? That
They didn't. They didn't. And they said, your contract will be in the mail. You'll get it in 2 days. 2 days passed, it wasn't there. So I tried to call people, couldn't find anybody that I knew. So I drove over to Manny. And I walked in a little convenience store there. And I said, did y'all ever hire you a coach here at Manny? And the guy said, yes, we did. I said, like, I was fixing to smile, I'm him. And he said, yeah, we had a fella named Lou Remkus. Look, I went, Lou Remkus, that ain't my name. I said, geez. So Lou Remkus knocked me out of the saddle, and I praised the Lord that he did that.
Oh, my goodness.
So I ended up down at Kinder. They just won the state championship, and they hired me as assistant. Well, Walter Stampley, the old principal at Vidalia, called me, and he said, we want you to come over and interview for an assistant's job. I said, well, I've done signed with Kinder. And then I got to thinking what my dad always said, always keep your doors open. Whatever it is, keep your doors open. So I called him back and told Mr. Stampley, yeah, I'll come over and interview with the superintendent and Coach Alonzo, who's the head coach. And I came over, and it was a good interview. And they said, well, Coach, if you want the job, you got it. And I said, when would I start getting paid? He said, end of July. I said, sign me up. Because Kinder's going to pay me in the end of September.
Oh, so...
and I said, no, sign me up. So I ended up coming as assistant coach back in 1968 to Don Alonzo, great coach. And I got the head job. Coach Alonzo moved on, and they put me the head job. And I was a rookie.
What year was that? What year did you get the...
1969.
That's the year that you became the head coach.
I was the head coach. My quarterback, Johnny Lee Hoffmeyer.
Oh, my goodness.
Who was my old coach later on. And so that's basically how I got started in high school coaching. That's just something I always wanted to do. I was raised in a dressing room. You know, everybody else was playing on Saturday. I was helping my dad clean up the dressing room after Friday night games. So
that's all you've ever known?
That's all I've ever known. You know.
What do you think you would have done if it wasn't for coaching?
Oh, I'd probably been an astronomical engineer. Might have worked in maintenance or something. But,
that's all you've ever known then is coaching.
That's all
right?
I've ever known.
No, man. That's funny. You were telling me something before we got on air that you were telling me about your scholarship to NLU.
Well, I started out, I redshirted my first year. I didn't weigh but 145 pounds. Today, if somebody signed me at 145 pounds, I'd be the water boy on the sideline. But I redshirted my first year. I played and lettered my second year, lettered my third year, and I got injured. I had a brain concussion, and they ruled that I couldn't play football anymore. So Coach White, I guess he felt sorry for me. He put me on his staff, and that was a great experience because he had some good football teams. Before I got to Northeast, we didn't win nothing. We couldn't have beat nobody. But Coach White instilled a pride in us, and we had some good ball clubs with him. Joe Profit, who was a first-round draft choice at Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
And Joe and I were roommates on the road. We went on trips. And Coach White said, I want you to keep Joe in line and get him to the meetings on time. That was my job. So that was a great experience. And then I got to come down to Vidalia. But it was, like I say, I'd earned the first string quarterback position at Northeast back in 63, 62, somewhere around there. But they discovered I couldn't play. And, so I was relegated to a backup position.
Let's start out with your proudest team that you ever coached.
Yeah, I have several teams that stand out. First one probably the 2003 team, which was unbeaten until we got to the semifinals, fixing to go to the Dome. And we were the #1 team in the state all year long. West St. John was #2. So we ended up playing West St. John in the semifinals. Of course, they had 7 Division I
I remember this.
signees playing on that team, probably the most talented team ever played. So our days were numbered.
That's
but that team was an outstanding team. Tony Hawkins was our quarterback, one of the best kids I ever coached. I remember we played Gina one night. We traded him by 4 touchdowns going in the 4th quarter. And Tony ignited us, and we came back and won that ball game.
Wow.
You know, one of the greatest comebacks.
That same year?
Same year, 2004. And he was my quarterback in 2003. He threw for over 50 touchdowns and had 1 interception in 2 years. And that came off a deflected ball off a shoulder pad. So it was great. Now, I had another good team back in 1973 that set a record for scoreless quarters, 37 straight scoreless quarters, which was later beaten by St. Thomas More years later.
So that was a state record.
It was a state record at that time, 37 straight quarters without giving up a point.
Wow.
And it was a tremendous team. We lost St. Louis in the quarterfinals.
Who were some of the guys on that team?
Oh, I had some outstanding. Robbie Savant, Dr. Savant, George Cupid, Bubba Crawford, Lee Bailey, hardest hitting kid I ever coached. I had Gary Waller. I had tremendous kids. And I remember we played Milton State for the district championship. And right off the bat, we got them for a safety. We was up 2-0. And my kids came running off the field going, "This game's over. This game's over." Because they knew they weren't going to score. But it was an outstanding team. 1985 team with Eddie Ray Jackson. We started a year off as #1 team in the state and worked our way down. From that point, we just had some bad luck. But we ended up playing Homer in the quarterfinals. And that team was an outstanding ball club. Of course, Eddie Ray was an all-stater, player of the year in our class. And we played down at Westlake with Eddie Ray, and he rushed for 300 yards. But he also caught 300 yards worth of passes.
Oh, my goodness.
He put on a show and scored 6 touchdowns, made the USA Today nationwide, you know. So the next week we played DeQuincy, where my dad coached at one time. And when we arrived in town, we drove past the stores, and all the stores had "Kill Eddie Ray" in the windows, you know, signs.
Oh, my goodness.
"Stop Eddie Ray, kill Eddie Ray." And so when we came out on the field and started the ball game, the DeQuincy fans hollering, "Kill Eddie Ray, kill Eddie Ray." Well, he put on another clinic. Then the second half, they was hollering, "Give the ball to Eddie Ray. Let Eddie Ray carry it." And I said, "Geez."
They became fans.
Oh, he was something. He went on, played at Southern Mississippi, you know.
Yeah. I remember hearing a lot about his name whenever I came up.
He was tough.
Yeah.
I remember one ball game we played McCall, who had their best football team they ever had in their history. And they were awesome. Eddie Ray carried the ball 47 times and never fumbled. Rushed for 300 yards, 47 times.
Going back to that first team that you were talking about, the West St. John.
Yeah.
They had several guys that played for LSU too, including, if I'm not mistaken, Tyson Jackson, who ended up being either the number 3 or 4 pick in the NFL draft.
And they had their fullback went there too.
Yeah.
But they had 7 Division I prospects.
And y'all gave them a pretty decent game.
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah.
And then they just wore us down.
Well,
you know. And freezing. That was one of the coldest nights I've ever seen.
What about, do you have any teams that just weren't very good and overachieved?
Most of my teams were overachievers. That's what I was always proud of them. We took little old scrappy kids and made ball clubs out of them, and they basically were overachievers. They played above their head. And that's what I'm most proudest of my Vidalia kids. And one of the things I always stuck out, they is the hardest hitting kids. Nobody wanted to play us.
Yeah. Because
they going to be sore till Wednesday. And so we had to play the top-notch teams in the state because nobody would play Vidalia. Didn't want to play and get physical. They may beat us, but they going to feel it for a good while. But
Our guys had pride in what they were doing.
They had a lot of pride.
That's
We
right.
put those horns on those helmets, and everybody we played, there's the Viking boys, you know.
You know, I hear all the stories from all the guys. I mean, from your early days all the way through your last days of coaching, and they all talk about, man, coach will have you ready to run through a wall out there, you know. And
well, I had great kids. I mean, great kids. I was so proud of all of them, you know. And I always told them, you put those horns on your helmet, you above all those schools in this whole area, because you're a Viking, you know. And that got them going.
that's right. Who are some of the best players that you ever coached?
Oh, I had some good ones. Bill Mosley, when I first started coaching, Bill Mosley was a linebacker for me. Tough as a boot. When we ran our 30-30s, which was sprint 30 yards and jog back 30 yards, that was one. We did 30 of those. And every time Bill Mosley get through with a sprint, he was purple because he put everything he had into it, into that sprint, because he wanted to be the best. And he ended up being the captain down at McNeese when they went to the Independence Bowl. But he was one of these kids that was probably one of the toughest kids I ever coached. I remember coming in his junior year, I came from the district meeting, and he came up, his coach did I make all district, and we had 10 teams in the district, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
I said, Bill, you didn't make it. You almost did, but you didn't make it. Now, look, you see the tears coming out of his eyes. He says, I'm going to show him next year. Well, the next year he was the player of the year in our class, defensive player of the year. He was tough as a boot. Tough as a boot.
So he's probably one of the toughest players.
He was one of the toughest players that I ever coached.
Who are some other guys who stood out over the years to you?
Lee Bailey was probably the hardest hitting youngster I ever coached. I mean, he would knock you out of your socks. And he prided himself. He had the longest arms. He could sit in a chair and drop something and pick it up, you know. And when he dressed out on Friday night, he put pads all up down his arms. And he looked like RoboCop. And these kids, they were scared to death of Lee Bailey.
What year was this?
This was 75, somewhere around in there. But we played Lake Providence. Lee Bailey put on a clinic. In one play, he left like 4 or 5 guys laid out on the field. That's how tough he was. And so after the ball game, we fixed to get on the bus. And I looked up, and there's about 20 strange-looking kids going on our school bus. And I walked over. I said, is there a problem? They said, Coach, we just want to shake hands with a man. They want to shake hands with Lee Bailey.
Wow, that's how you know you made an impact.
He was tough. Went to Tech. You know, he played at Tech till he tore up his shoulder, but he was a good one. And, of course, I had Keith Woodside that went to Texas A&M. Yeah. He's an Aggie. Yep. Everybody said, did you coax him to go on to A&M? I had nothing to do with it. I remember seeing him the day we got out for Christmas, and I said, Keith, if you had to sign today, where would you go? He said, Texas A&M. I said, why? They ain't even been over here to see you yet. He said, I just want to go to Texas A&M. And he set the record in the Southwest Conference, which is no longer there, for catches out of the back, 72 catches out of the backfield. And he went on to Green Bay and started up there. And I was really proud of him. Of course, I had Eddie Ray. I done told you about Eddie Ray, but I had great kids, you know, all the way down the line.
Who would you say was? Did you have any kid that you just felt like was going to win the game for you? You felt like this kid is never out of the game? Yeah,
I had a bunch of them. Tony Hawkins was a prime example of that. Josh Hoppire and Jared Hoppire were in that same mold. You always knew that they could come through. But I had a lot of kids that I just trusted them with my life, you know, and that's the way it was. Okay, so this is going to be a tough question. One kid that you coached, the MVP of all the years, can you answer that question, or? It would have to be Bill Mosley. Bill Mosley. Because every play, he put it on the line. He sort of embodied what when I called for him to go through a stunt, and we stunted a lot. He would go through the line, knock the guard down, knock the back down, and then tackle the ball carrier. That's the way he was. He won a game for me one year against Dale High with his mouth. Dale High's punting to us. It's a close ball game. And they went back to punt, and I'd call him. I said, do not rough the punter. Let him kick it to us, and we'll run the clock out. We can't. Well, naturally, he goes in there and just kills that guy. I think one of his legs was laying over here, and I was going, geez, they threw the flag, you know. And the referee called the Dale High captain. He says, all right, do you want the penalty or do you want the play? If he took the play, is our ball downfield. He didn't take the penalty. Well, Bill is walking back after he done knocked him out. He walked by the captain and he said, Coach said, take the play. And the kid said, we'll take the play. And then he went, wait, in those days, if you made that decision,
it was over.
It's over.
Yeah.
I mean, you got one shot. You can't say, no, I want the penalty. It was all over. I remember Coach Calvert on the other sideline. He jumped as high as a telephone pole. He's going, what the deal? So that's the way Bill was. That's the kind of kid he was.
So he got the hit and didn't have to pay the price.
He caused the penalty, but he talked him out of taking.
Well, you couldn't be too mad at him after that.
No, I was happy with it.
We've talked about some of the Vidalia players, but I think people will be interested to hear about some of the opposing players and some of the opposing teams over the years. Why don't you talk about some of the best players? Let's start there. Some of the best players that you can remember going against it over the years.
I remember back in '73 when we had our old squad we played St. Louis. They had a big running back named Thad Minaldi. Well, Thad Minaldi went on to LSU. He was a star down there, and he was tough. He broke our scoreless streak about the third play of the game. Of course, in defense of my kids, there was about 4 holding penalties on that play that they never called. I mean, when you grab a linebacker and pull him down to the ground, I mean, that's kind of called holding. But he scored a touchdown, went on, had a great career. Probably one of the toughest guys I ever played against was Booger McFarland, who played at Winsboro. And
you told me before we started recording he owes you some money, huh?
Yeah, Booger owes me money because all his highlight films that got him to LSU and Tampa Bay was him playing against the Vidalia Vikings and killing us. You know, he is an outstanding player.
And he was Winsboro, right?
Yeah, he's at Winsboro.
Yeah.
And we played Booger in the regular season. We beat him. And we ended up having to play him second round of playoff up there. And I told my kids, do not talk to any reporters that come out here to practice because I didn't want any bulletin board material. And sure enough, one of them reporters showed up and asked one of my kids, y'all beat Booger before, what are you going to do to him this time? He says, we handled Booger before, we're going to handle him again. That paper was in Winsboro before I got home to eat supper. And Booger came out, he was fired up to the hill.
You want to name any names on who did it?
No.
So he got Booger fired up.
Oh, I mean, I said, of all things to get Booger going like that, jeez.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of good players.
What did he tell you that you told me that he'd come over to the sideline?
Well, that was an interesting story. He'd come over the sideline the whole ball game. Coach, run my way. Well, we ran an off-tackle play with our fullback, who was Brian Bradford. He was a hard hitter, too.
Yeah, he's a good guy, too.
Bradford went to Louisiana Tech and started for them for 3 years. But he carried the ball off tackle. Well, Booger slid down the line of scrimmage, met him in the hole, and that was the hardest lick I've ever heard on a football field. It would sound like a cannon going off when they hit. I mean, it was a heck of a hit right there in front of us. And I said, let me go get Bradford. I know he's dead. But Bradford jumped up and jogged back to the huddle like nothing happened. Booger staggered around out there on the field going, woo, woo. he came by and said, "Y'all got me on that one." That may have been one of the hardest hits Booger ever had.
Yeah. Wow, that's two pretty big boys hitting.
Oh, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. But Bradford's the type of kid, he'd hit you, knock your socks off, lay you out, and then he'd reach down there and pick you up. "Come on, you did good, man." I had to tell him, I said, "Quit pulling him up off the ground. He may have a broken neck." And you pulling him off the ground. I said, "Geez." But it was, you know, I had great kids. Another one, oh, he was awesome. Awesome. Played at Fairdy. He was one of the toughest nose guards ever. And he killed us too. He went on and played at Tech when they won the national championship. What was that young's name? See, I got dementia. And Walter Johnson. That's my one of the best players I ever played against. Walter Johnson. He calls me Headache. He played at Fairdy. Walter Johnson. I don't know how I forget it. I probably suppressed the memory.
You tucked it back away.
Oh God. Oh God. He was awesome.
What years was that?
It was 1980 something. I can't remember.
Okay.
But
somebody will put it in the comments after they watch this. Somebody will write it down.
He was awesome. In fact, when he played guard, he cleaned us out, and then when he got on defense, we double teamed him and we couldn't stop him. He's still making tackles. And he coached against me later on at Fairdy. He's still running around over there.
What were some of the toughest teams that you played against?
Well, West St. John.
You think that's probably the toughest one? That's hard to beat that.
That was hard to beat with those kids. They went on one state championship. And probably Winfield had some tremendous teams. And they had a backfield where all three of them went to LSU.
Wow.
Two of the guys, Chapman and Dale, went on to play in the NFL, you know. So they were awesome. But we held our own against them. But there have been a lot about Haynesville always had good ball clubs, and Spring Hill, Jonesboro Hodge. I remember calling in Haynesville because nobody would play us. And he said, "Coach, you the first ones that ever called us for a ball game." I said, "Well, maybe I got the wrong number." And they were something else, you know. Haynesville, one of the top teams ever in North Louisiana.
Yeah, they've got so many championships.
Oh, God. I mean, when we played them, my kids drove up at the stadium and they had all their state championship teams on the side of the stadium.
Yeah.
And they was all, you know, mouths open and stuff, so it was tough.
What would you say your toughest environment? Maybe it was a playoff game or whatever. Do you remember kind of going into any environments and just being like, "Oh, crap"?
Oh, a lot of them. Jeez, a lot of places. I remember we used to go up to Lake Providence and played there, and their lights were so dim you couldn't see your hand out in front. You had to wave it, see if you could see it. And
not a lot of passing that night, huh?
No, but I remember the kids walking in and they said, "Coach, what's those holes in the windows?" I said, "Bullet holes." They went, "Oh, Lord." You know, and Richwood was a tough place to play. And, McCall was a tough place to play. Yeah, I'll always remember those places.
I want to say that Adam Probst was telling me a story about did y'all go to South Cameron or somewhere?
South Cameron, oh, geez.
I remember him saying, "Man, it was kind of scary to get off the bus."
Well, they had Nutra hanging from the goalpost. Dead Nutra. That's kind of like a voodoo. And
he said, "Man, we got there early, and I think everybody in town was drunk in the parking lot yelling at us."
Yeah, I mean, it was a unique place to play. It was right down on the coast, you know.
Yeah.
The Gulf was just a mile away. And the wind was blowing so hard that I think Adam was my punter. He punted one, ball went behind him. The wind was going so hard. I said, "Oh, geez." It was something else, but we've had some tough places to play.
And speaking of Adam's buddy Ryan, didn't he pull a kick on you one time that he told you he had it?
Ryan, one of the toughest kids I ever had. He was blocking on a punt over against Jesuit out of Shreveport, and he laid out 3 guys blocking on that punt. Laid them out. I mean, they had to cart them off. And so we tried an onside kick one night, and I said, Ryan, can you onside kick? He said, I got this, Coach. He went up there and stumbled and kicked the ball, and it went 2 feet off the tee. And he fell over the tee. Coach Hoppire says, that's embarrassing. But Ryan, he was a heck of a ball player, heck of a player.
Yeah, just got to get him going in the right direction, huh?
Yeah. He was a lot of fun, too. He was a lot of fun, Coach.
One more question before we take a break. What was your toughest ending to a season that kind of your toughest loss at the end of a season?
Oh, gosh, there's a lot of those.
Did you have any heartbreakers that you were like, man?
A lot of them. I had a lot of heartbreakers I coached for 47 years at Vidalia, and had 3 to that at Northeast, so that's 50 years of coaching. And we've had some. I had a game up at Delhi where we had over 600 yards of offense, but we had 8 touchdowns called back by the same official. The same official threw a flag every time we scored, and that was a heartbreaking loss because you got to win those,
Yeah.
But it was. I've had some tough ones, and it's hard to get over them.
Yeah.
It takes you weeks to get over a loss, so it's something else. But I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world.
That's part of it, ain't it?
It was a great ride.
That's right. That's part of it.
And so proud of all our kids and my coaches.
You had a great coaching staff.
Oh, I had a great coaching staff. Tommy Lannis played at Tech with Terry Bradshaw. Coach Hoppire, my first quarterback, he had one of the best baseball coaches in the state, and he's an outstanding football coach too. And had Terry Brown help me, and Coach Fred Marsalis. He was a staple. One of my assistants, Coach Ken Simmons, the basketball coach at one state. He's an outstanding coach. And so I was fortunate, and most of them stayed with me for 25 years, so there was no big turnover in coaches.
Yeah, you had some good kids and some good coaches over the years.
I had great kids and I had great coaches. And we had great fans in Vidalia. The parents were tremendous.
That's right.
They was always helping us out. And we were a self-sustained program. In other words, we bought everything for the kids, from their shoes to their helmets, everything. They paid no money.
Yeah.
A lot of schools don't do that nowadays. They make you buy your helmets, your pads, what have you. We bit the bullet. And
always made it work, didn't you?
I always made them work.
And you spent many hours in that field house washing clothes and
all the
getting it ready. That's right.
All the time. I mean, I felt like my kids. I wanted them clean and dry so that they perform the next day. And one of the things that we did away with 2-a-days. Everybody in those days did 2-a-days. Practice in the morning, practice in the evening. I said, this is tough because your morning workouts, dew's on the ground, your feet are soaking wet, your blisters develop, your balls are soaking wet, and then you come back later for another. So I went to a night practice. I was the first one to do that. Went to night practice. We practiced from 6 to 10, but about an hour of that was water breaks. That was one of the things. I said, I get more out of my kids after dark than I do it.
I'm sure they appreciate that in the Louisiana heat, don't they?
At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is 200 degrees.
Let's talk about just briefly, how did coaching change over the years from when you started till your last years of coaching?
Coaching has really changed over the years. I was old school, treat them tough, run their tail off, make them do right, punish them when they broke the rules. And I think that's gone by the wayside nowadays with the coaching profession. I think a lot of the coaches nowadays want to look pretty on Friday, not put in the work during the rest of the week. But it's coaching is a 24-hour job, 365 days a year. I mean, you get no days off, and so that's where it's changed. I remember when I in high school, we didn't lift weights. You know, weights. What is that? And then now that's all you can. You got to lift your weights now, or you're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
But it's changed, and I know my nephew, that defensive coordinator at Gina, told me the other day. Said, you know, if you was back in coaching these days, said they'd be done fired you at 8 different schools.
You're too tough, huh?
Yeah, he said you've been fired at 8 different schools, and it's you got discipline. You got to have discipline. You got to be tough love with your kids, and I think that's kind of gone out the wayside.
You know, but I don't hear any of the kids from those generations that were coached like that. I don't hear any of them complaining about it. They all look back and they're all grateful for that. And I'm kind of sad that is going by the wayside, because I feel like kids these days, even though they may not want it in that moment, they'll appreciate it down the road.
Kids want discipline. They may tell you different, but they won't be held accountable. I remember saying one year, I said, when the coaches disappear off this earth, tumbleweeds going to roll across Main Street. I said, it'll be all over then. That's our last line of discipline.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so it's the kids have changed too. Some of my kids these last couple of years said, Coach, how would we fare against your old teams? I said, oh, they beat the snot out of you guys. I said, geez, they as tough as all get out, you know, because that's the way they were raised in those days. Now it's so easy.
Yeah.
So easy. Mm-hmm. You get up in an air-conditioned house, you get in an air-conditioned car, you go to an air-conditioned place.
We're all softer now, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, I go outside and mow the yard, and I about pass out. Used to, I could go all day long.
That's right.
But times have changed.
Yeah.
Kids are bigger, faster, stronger than they've ever been. But there's something missing. There's something missing in a lot of them.
Yeah. Why don't we talk what the Faraday-Vidalia rivalry means to the Miss Lou and has meant over the years to not only the schools, but so many citizens and the people who are just so proud of it.
Oh, it's you know, you have Michigan, Ohio State. Well, the second one is Faraday and Vidalia. They second in that list. But it's I know whenever we beat Faraday, the Faraday coach would say, Coach, you just got me fired. So, you know, that's the way they felt, you know, and it was a tough rivalry. Jeez. And probably one of the toughest of the year when I came back. I retired in 2009 because I had cancer. And then I got into remission with that. And I came back 4 years later to help Coach Hancock. I coached his defense. And then when he left, they said, Coach, apply for the job. And I did. I kind of had the inside track because most of the guys on the committee, I had coached them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had the inside track on that job. Uh-huh. But we came back and had 2 real good years, 17 and 18. But that Faraday game in 2017, we had lost like maybe 6 in a row to them. The last 4, we'd been outscored like 180-6. So when we played Faraday, it's kind of like David and Goliath, and we were the ones that had the rocks. They were Goliath. And nobody gave us a chance to beat Faraday in Faraday that year because they had Rosenthal and the other kid that went to 2 LSU signees on that ball club. They were awesome. They should have won the state that year. But we went over there, and I said, Coach Norris, my offensive coordinator, threw a halfback pass. We went down and scored. And I told Rob, who was my defensive coach, my nephew, I said, we'll see if we're ready on this first play when Faraday has the ball. Faraday went back to pass, and he got hit by 4 people at the same time. And I said, I think these kids are ready to play tonight. And we went into halftime leading 20-0.
Wow.
And Verity fans, they had to have medical response teams go through the stands. Because, I mean, but they didn't have a chance in the world playing these people. And we ended up beating them. And I'd never seen a bunch of kids so happy.
Yeah.
They came in and went in the dressing room. They was dancing on top of the lockers, and I let them go.
That's right.
I said, you fall out and break your leg, you ain't going to play next week. But, you know, that was a great win.
You know, that was such a David and Goliath win for you that I remember. I can't remember where I was that night, but I couldn't make the game. And I was pulling up this little app on my phone that would show the high school scores. And I said, I better check on this score. And I got on there, and it was like 20-0. And I said, it's 20-0. And then I said, Vidalia's winning. And then I kept looking, and I was like, I thought something was wrong with the app because I was like, are we beating Faraday 20? Like, and then I kept looking at the score, and I was like, what is going on over there? These kids are, you know, I mean, they're shocking the world.
They were playing. They were playing hard. And a bunch of coaches called me that next week and said, Coach, that's the biggest upset in the whole state of Louisiana in all classes. He said, how in the world did you do that? I said, we was lucky. We was just lucky. But it was, that's quite a rivalry. And, you know, they'd slip over on our campus and put their flag on our flag post. It was a tough rivalry.
Well, let's talk about that retirement just a little bit. That, you know, you came back as the head, you were gone, and then you came back for what, 2 years? And then they sort of pulled the carpet out from under us, I guess.
After I got the job, and we had 2 good ball clubs. Both of them went a long way in the playoffs.
Yeah, you were doing a great job when you came back.
And I'd still be there today, probably, if that hadn't happened. But what it was, there were 4 coaches in the state that just coached football. They had retired, and they could coach football. They didn't have to come teach school. They wasn't on the faculty, basically. Mm-hmm. So there was a mess up down south, so the association, being what they are, they said, we'll just throw all 4 of them out. So they informed me that I couldn't coach anymore because of that rule. And a little bit later on, as the season got going, they rescinded the rule and sent word, yeah, you can coach again. But I never did because my nephew had become the head coach there every day, so I wasn't going to go in and upset him. But I'd probably still be coaching because I miss it like all get out.
Do you miss it?
The kids, that's what you miss in coaching, is your kids. I had a great time. I messed with all of them just like I used to mess with you.
Yeah.
And
look, you got to tell the story real quick before we leave. What you did to me at graduation. You want to tell it, or you want me to tell it?
No, there you were. You were a mountain of a man.
What that was about 96
in those
pounds?
days. In fact, I used to ask you if you had one stripe on your pajamas because you were so thin. So you said something one day about the weightlifting and everything. I said, I'm going to get you your own set of weights. So I went in and found a coat hanger and straightened it out, and I put those 2 rolls of the toilet paper, you know, on each end, taped them up, and that was your weight equipment. And when they was graduating, the practice for graduation, I sent it out there to the principal and say, tell Ronnie to get his weight equipment. It's in my way up here, and take it home. That was a good one. You was a good sport about it, though.
It was in front of 100 people. You got me too, because we'd been going back and forth for all those years.
All them years.
I had no idea that they said, Ronnie, I need you to come up here, and in front of all 100 people we graduated with, I need you to get your weight set. I said, he got me on the way out.
That was Mr. Duck, wasn't it?
I think it was. I think it was. And I said, man, I never could beat you.
Oh, you did a pretty good job.
I remember I was telling Dustin before we started filming that I remember you telling everybody that I used to have to run around the shower to get wet.
Yeah, I saw you run around in the pea shower trying to get wet. You had to run around in there.
Oh, goodness.
You was so heavily built in those days. Huh?
I know, and you know, the women look at me now and they're probably like, you know, he's so well put together,
Yeah,
just
I know. I've
borderline supermodel material, and they don't realize.
I've heard a lot of them say that about
you. Just the drunk ones, I think. Well, let's wrap up. Let's talk about just what are you the most proud of? You know, if you look back, if you look back from today, from you know the first day you became a Viking, you always say it's a great day to be a Viking. What are you the most proud of over all the years?
That was a saying I had for years, and I told them that at the Faraday pep rally. That day we upset Faraday, and I walked up there and I said, I looked outside, the sun coming up, and I said, it's a great day to be a Viking. And you're playing against the #1 team in the nation, and the #1 band in the nation. I said, you've got to be ready to go. But I was just proud of all my kids through the years, every one of them that laid it on the line for us, you know. And that's what I'm so proud of.
Not so much the football, but just the young men.
The young men, that the respect they carried for other teams, you know, playing them. And it was that's probably my greatest thing. Remembering my kids and their efforts they put forth to make a good football team, and that's why I got into the Hall of Fame, is because of those kids. So that's my proudest thing, and getting in the Hall of Fame, because not everybody makes that. You know.
What year was that you got into
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I stood up there to get that award, I just think the thought went back to all my kids.
Yeah, it's not an individual award.
No.
Is it? Yeah.
It's a team award. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
It's a team award, Vidalia.
And it's got that Vidalia Vikings right there on the trophy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's down there on that plaque in the All-Star room. So that's what makes it good.
Well, look, I appreciate you coming out and spending some time with us today.
Anytime.
I can say, as an old Viking and for all the Vikings past, now, and future, we appreciate everything that you've done for the school, for the football program, for the town of Vidalia, and just for you being you.
Well,
you've contributed greatly.
I never change.
That's right. So thank you for coming out. We want to thank all the viewers. We hope that you guys enjoyed this as much as I did, and hopefully you did, Coach. God bless everybody, and as always, have a champion day.
Hey, Miss Lou, come visit us, Tom and Wright Granning at Go Mart and On The Go Deli.
Go Mart has clean restrooms, community coffee, an awesome beer cave, and a great selection of anything you may need.
Located at the corner of Highland Boulevard and Highway 61 South in Natchez.
Also stop by Wardo's Po' Boys at 309 North Broadway on the beautiful Natchez Bluff.
Where everyone is family.
Hey y'all, it's Ronnie and Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we want to tell you about our awesome partner, J.E. Hicks Distributing Company, also known as Hicks Chicks.
Hicks Chicks is a local, family-owned food distribution company that has been serving the Miss Lou since 1945. You already know they serve all of your favorite restaurants, but did you know that they are also open to the public?
Hicks Chicks has a variety of food products, including delicious heat and eat options like chicken and dumplings, white bean chicken chili, lasagna, and gumbo. They also carry a wide variety of seafood options like shrimp, crabs, tuna steaks, salmon, and catfish.
And don't forget about their delicious burgers that are already pattied up for you and their amazing dessert options.
So stop by today at 1380 Martin Luther King Jr. Road in Natchez. Hicks Chicks.
Way more than just chicken.
Hey guys, Ronnie Calhoun here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight. We're out at our awesome partners, Gregg Veterinary Clinic, and we are in the back in the Barkley Pet Hotel and Spa. I'm standing in the Magnolia Bell Suite, which is one of 5 elite boarding suites available to your 4-legged furry friends when you travel this summer. Each suite comes with a private bed, flat screen TV, 24/7 video monitoring, and a sliding door so your pet feels like they're home. They provide one-on-one walking and activities in a fenced-in private backyard. So call Gregg Vet Hospital today and request your pet suite at the Barkley Pet Hotel and Spa. They'll leave the light on for you. Call Gregg Veterinary Hospital today.